Since its inception in 1790, the United States Census has been the country's means of accounting for as many individuals who reside in the country. The census takes place once every 10 years, and since the last one in 2010, certainly a lot has changed. Housing crises in places like San Francisco makes shared housing more commonplace than ever before, and you have people living out of Airbnbs whose names are nowhere to be found on a title. But do you know what has proliferated a lot in the past 10 years? Social media. As a matter of fact, 72% of US adults have a social media account, at least one of them. And that's a figure that's doubled since 2009. The internet's head honcho, Facebook, sees daily activity from 3/4 of its user base. You know what else has blown up in the past 10 years? Google. Now, we don't need to get into the numbers to know how many people use Google. It's almost a given for anyone who owns a computer or a smartphone. But what's important to know is that according to a Pew Research Center study, smartphone ownership has risen from 35% in 2011 to upwards of 81% in 2018. Now, let's pause there and get back to the census. As of April this year, the Census Bureau has made plans to continue conducting the census via traditional methods, which includes sending paper forms to over 100 million residents across the country. They have had discussions about allowing residents to use the internet to complete these forms, but who knows if that'll actually increase the response rate. The point is, polling the country with forms is unfortunately not perfect. And as a matter of fact, the census about 20 years ago in 2000, as much as 6.4 million people are estimated to have gone unaccounted for. These are for reasons like privacy concerns, illiteracy, or homelessness. But on top of that, as many as 3.1 million people were counted twice. It's a challenge to count so many heads, and it's only going to get harder from here on out. I want to transition back into the internet giants I mentioned earlier. Now, it's no surprise that everyone's using Facebook and Google. They're very useful tools for day-to-day life. Sometimes they can be a little bit too useful though. We're becoming more aware of the information that these companies acquire on us. Facebook can have as much as 600 megabytes worth of information on us. That's about 400,000 Word documents. Facebook gets their information from you using the service and also the connected apps that we use Facebook to sign into. Google, on the other hand, gets information from your search queries, your location data, your YouTube watch history, photos, ads, and even your workout routines. You can actually download the information that Google has on you, and you can find a staggering 5.5 gigabytes worth of information on you. That's about 3 million Word documents, by the way. It can be argued that although these companies claim to use our information just for targeted advertising, they seem to know us better than we know ourselves. Compare that to mailing out tens of millions of blank forms and relying on people to fill them out and then send them back. Who's to say that there isn't more accurate information simply floating around in just these two companies? Now, I want to make this clear. I am not making a case to give Facebook and Google another reason to use all of our information. But just think for a moment how powerful these companies are. Obviously, they have our basic demographic information such as how old we are or where we live. This is important information to the census because it's what the government uses to allocate different budgets for funding programs. But that's not good enough. Earlier I said 72% of US adults have a social media account. That leaves 28% of folks out there that aren't accounted for, and that doesn't speak anything on minors. The 2000 census, where 6.4 million people went unaccounted for, only made up about 2% of the population, which means the other 98% were captured pretty well. So Facebook and Google and whatever other company has to close that gap. How would they do that? Well, the average age for social media users is dropping because you have more and more minors using these platforms at younger and younger ages. There's pretty sparse usership throughout all age windows. Minors are just getting started, and folks 65 over are pretty slow to hop aboard. But that 18 to 65 window is pretty well integrated. You could probably just start there and then map your way out to the extremes. Some Google services manage people's contacts, especially if you're an Android user. It's probably not too hard to find everyone's grandma contact or nephew contact, but some people don't have social media accounts and some people don't even have smartphones. So Facebook might be out of luck on that front. Or, ironically enough, their solution could be in the name itself, faces. I don't want to think about how many albums there are out there of family vacations and weddings and reunions and barbecues. Facial recognition is no joke, and that goes for Google Photos too. Their software these days can identify your friends and family in your photos before you even tell them that they're there to begin with. They can recognize your photo and tag them before you even realize it. I'd wager that in photos with less than 15 people, if 2/3 of the individuals can be mapped to an existing social media account, that the rest could also be identified using these methods. That being said, if 72% of people out there are using social media, that means the remaining 28% could be accounted for. This would yield a rate of over 99% identification among US residents. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts below on whether you think our information could actually be used to get an accurate head count on us. And if I'm wrong, well, the next census comes in 10 more years, so who knows what 10 more years of data will yield at that point. While this census gets underway next year, let's be a little bit more mindful on how much information is known about us that we don't know ourselves. Until next time, I'm Christoph, and I'm signing off.